Welcome to our present state versus history on Speaker. Here we are focused on the current events of our culture through the principles of our history, trying to make sense of the culture and the mindset of today. I am your host, Ray Mayfield. Okay, folks, here we are again back on the pod. It's March, my goodness, the second Saturday. We just come out of the McDonald County caucus down there. Appreciate all of you that went and participated and all that. And they got the delegates selected and given their assignment, I guess you could say. And things set to go there. One thing that kind of encouraged me, they announced there about the number of voters in the last primary election. Basically the contributing factor to determine how many delegates were allowed per county. And our little county, McDonald County, did quite well because the folks of this county do vote, and that's a good thing. Participation is a vital aspect of this government of ours surviving and thriving. And if we do not get this younger generation involved, if we do not get ourselves involved, we're going to see this thing dissipate and fade away right in front of our very eyes, I'm afraid. So anyway, I'm not going to get on that today. Again, check us out on the truegospelchurch.org website that we have on the internet, and you'll find the links there to the New Life Fellowship Church in Neosho, where Pastor Mark and Bonnie Buzzard are doing a wonderful job spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ in the Neosho area. If you don't have a home church, if you come, I'm sure Mark and Bonnie would love to meet you and visit with you and help you in your path towards righteousness. Amen. Check out the other links on our website there. We've got the Liberty Pastors of Black Robe Regiment. We've got the Center for National Constitutional or the National Center for Constitutional Studies. We'll get that right. We got the University of Christian Studies and Seminaries, Dr. Guy and Sister Kathy. Good friends for a long time, doing a fabulous job there with the school and church as well there in Eagle River, Alaska. Anyhow, check us out. I hope you're listening to these podcasts on the Spreaker platform, our present state versus history. If not, you can check us out on the Facebook page at that same title, or any other places where your podcasts might be playing on the platform, our present state versus history. So once again, I'm encourage you to hit that website, thetruegospelchurch.org, and participate. Hit that donate button, share that link, whatever it is that you can do to help us out and get this thing going. I really appreciate what support you can. And those of you that are helping us out here, I really appreciate what you're doing. I can't tell you enough. Sometimes I get very frustrated within myself at how difficult it is to get support for something like this. It is a way I see it anyway, a vital, important endeavor to our ability to operate as citizens of this country, as our ability to operate as a free country and to continue to maintain these things. But, we've got all these organizations out there will send $19 a month to save, these old dogs and cats that they've drug out of the winter, that they're showing the same video for the last 15 years of the same dogs. And yet we need 3,000 more members. That's $56,000 a month, folks. They don't seem to have any trouble gathering up that, but when you're doing something like this, you can't get two people to send you $19 a month. So, I know I'm crying and whining and complaining. You don't want to hear that. But anyway, just saying, I never have been one of those that try to guilt people into giving or helping out. But it is what it is. People are going to do what they're going to do. And Lord willing, He'll keep providing as we keep pressing on towards the mark of the high calling. And sometimes it's pretty frustrating, though, to when you go out in public and you're treated like the plague and can't get nobody to help. And, I'm not really doing anything that warrants that type of behavior. What we're doing here is just public knowledge. We're just trying to educate people. Lots of people like to throw rocks and criticize and pick at us, but we're just doing what we can. So anyway, I'm probably going to be on a little bit of a rant today, if you can't tell already. We got into this last week. There's been, several folks that's been on the radio programs and across the country with a lot of things that have really got under my skin. We've got folks talking about the Super Bowl commercials, and I admit I didn't watch the Super Bowl. I didn't watch the commercials. I really don't have any idea what they're talking about, other than just listening to some of these rhetoric, I'll call it, coming from the Christian community about some ad that went on, talking about using the rapture of the church as a scare tactic, different things like that. I got a whole page of stuff I could get into there, and I probably will at a later day, but we're not going to do that, because another deal that come on was a politician, a individual who holds public office, is not in the state of Missouri, thank God, but in another state, and they were being interviewed about this frozen embryo deal, and the statements they made was that these Christians, not all Christians now, just these Christians that are national, what did she call us? She called us Christian nationalist extremists. There we go. The more I think about that title, the more I kind of like it. I guess if I was going to be labeled as an extremist, I would like to be labeled as an extremist in the Christian nationalism, or my patriotism for my country and my belief in God. And, back in the days of the founding fathers of this country, those folks were called patriots. Those folks were called freedom fighters. But today we're Christian nationalist extremists. I'll get it right. And basically the thing that puts us in that category, I'm admitting I'm one of these people she's talking about. But if you believe that man's inalienable rights are given by God and not government, then you are a Christian national extremist, or Christian nationalist. There we go. Christian nationalist. We got to be Christian first, right? Got to be Christian and then a nationalist, and then you're an extremist because you're a Christian nationalist. See, and the reason she said for that was that the problem with God giving man his inalienable rights is that man was deciding what it was that God had said. And so that was a problem, she said. Well, as soon as she said that, I thought, well, didn't you just do the same thing? Aren't you part of mankind? And aren't you trying to say that God did not say that? So aren't you the judge of what God said or what God didn't say? But, and then I thought, well, here's my sarcastic old Ray coming out. Well, you're a woman, so I guess that doesn't, that you're not, it wasn't man making that declaration. It was a woman making that decision. Oh, don't get mad at me, just laugh. Come on now. The reality of it is man, meaning mankind. We, man, are not the ones that decided what those natural laws are. And if you go back to our original documents, even going back to the Declaration of Independence before the Constitution, you're going to find references by our founding fathers of natural law, what they called nature's law, natural law, and how it is that we come to the conclusion that we have these inalienable rights and that they are given to God, or given to us by God. It wasn't man deciding that, oh, God said we can have these things. It is a basic rule or a law, if you will, that has been set in motion by nature and what the founding fathers called nature's law. But, it wasn't just the founding fathers that had this viewpoint. These guys developed this viewpoint due to the readings and the educations and the life experiences that they all shared, bringing them into that single location at the same table to declare the government of which we call today the government of the United States of America through the Constitution of the United States. This thing is like determining, saying, well, what is life? Because this is basically what they were talking about. They were talking about, frozen embryos and the creation of life in the womb, and basically there was Supreme Court in a state that ruled that no matter where the life was, it was life, and it was protected by a natural law or the inalienable rights we have, which one of them is life. See, our Constitution protects life first and foremost. So therefore, it is the right of God that we live and have life. It's not a given right government or by, some man or some theology or anything else. Life is, and life exists because God said, let there be life, and life came to be, okay? And so it's a natural right or law, if you will, of what life is determined. Who and what determines natural law is not man and our decisions. And these are not my own ideas that we're going through. We're going to go over some things. We're going to talk about history. Of course, that was one of the things that this individual was also up in arms about, is how we don't need to be interpreting things by the ancient principles and thought processes of days that have gone by, because after all, we are more a modern society today, and we have, the ability to do things. We got to what's the word? We got to develop with the modern times. But you see, this is the problem, because our Constitution was not put together. I've said this multiple times in these podcasts. It was not put together as a how to do government plan. It was put together on a how to hold back the vices and the perversions of man's nature, because it is the developments and the corruptions of the human being because of natural law that we have to warrant ourselves to protect ourselves, because the natural tendency for man is to be the man in control and have all the power and all the money. And that's one of those natural laws that's been set in motion by the curse. That wasn't set in motion at the beginning. It wasn't the intended purpose for mankind. But that is the state we find ourselves in today because of the curse of mankind falling away from the natural ordinances and harmony that God set man up to be within its human race. And I won't get into that. We get into the biblical things. You see, this is where we have such a problem with all this so-called separation of church and state. I mentioned here in the last podcast, we were talking about the folks that come in there. They're trying to misrepresent the letter of 1802 that Jefferson sent as a response to the Dunbury Baptist board that sent him a letter. I'm not going to get into all that, talking about the separation of church and state. So they say, well, if you're a Christian nationalist, then you shouldn't have any voice in the government because, you're just all Christian and you're all into that God stuff. And heaven forbid we should have you involved in our government, because God and government don't mix together. Well, that's hooey, because without God, there is no government. And without the Word of God and the purposes that God has set forth in His natural law, there is no form of government. It is called hierarchy and chaos, and the biggest gun wins the day. It'd be like back in 2002 when I went to Africa, and we were running down this main fairway between the northern and the southern borders of Zambia. That road that runs alongside the border of the Congo, there's about 60 miles where it runs right on the edge of the Congo. And the guy that we were with from Zambia, we got to talking about some of the heinous things that had taken place there. And I asked him, I said, what kind of government is in control of the Congo at that time, in this 2002? He said the man with the biggest gun is in control of the government of the Congo at the time. And when a man with a bigger gun comes along, then he takes control. So that's the natural progression of man and his own government, is the man with the biggest gun and the most authority and the biggest ability to dominate and take over control is the one in control. And the founding fathers understood that basic principle, and they called that tyranny. And that's the reason why they built a constitution, to try to protect us against man's inability to operate under the precepts of God's law without some kind of checks and balances and something system to put him in that position. So we're going to go on here. I'm going to read some things. Different quotes from different places, and I'll try to give proper addresses where these things come from, because again, this is not Ray making up all this stuff and this is what I think, so by golly, everybody ought to follow it, because that would be exactly some of the things that we don't want happening in our government and in our country today. We want to follow the rule of law. We want to follow the natural law. We want to follow the will of God, regardless whether you want to admit there's a God or not God. And we're going to deal with a little of that too in this podcast. And I can see I'm already way into my time limit, so this is probably not going to make it all in one episode. We're probably going to have to build a couple of different platforms to finish this, because I've done some of this in the past, but I'm definitely going to revisit it pretty thoroughly again in this little broadcast. So bear with me. You may have to come back a time or two to get the full picture, but we're going to talk about why the founding fathers had the ideas that they had, declaring that our inalienable rights came from God and not government. That is not a new philosophy invented by these so-called Christian nationalist extremists, okay? So back here in some of the writings that our founding fathers read was a man named Locke, okay? John Locke was a philosopher, and the founders found harmony in John Locke's expression in his famous essay concerning human understanding. In it, Locke points out that it defies the most elementary aspects of reason and experience to presuppose that everything in existence developed as a result of fortuitous circumstances. The mind, for example, Locke says, will not accept the proposition that the forces of nature churning about among themselves would ever produce a watch or even a lead pencil, let alone the marvelous interactions of the human eye, the ear, or even the simplest organisms found in nature. All these are the product of intelligent design and high precision engineering. Locke felt that the person who calls himself an atheist is merely confessing that he has never dealt with the issue of the Creator's existence. Therefore, Locke said an atheist would be to that extent irrational and out of touch with reality. In fact, out of touch with the most important and fundamental realities. So that was Mr. John Locke from 1632 to 1704. This man was one of the great philosophers that kings and anybody with any influence looked to as a expert, you could say. And he's saying right there that anybody put any kind of thought process into whether or not there was a creator or not, he had no choice but to determine that there was some kind of intelligent design that put these things all together. And he said if they didn't come to that conclusion, they were out of touch or irrational with the most fundamental realities. Okay, so it wasn't just our founding fathers, you know. It was a pretty popular, I guess you could say, notion, if you will. Some other statements that Mr. Locke made. He says, to begin with, each person knows that he exists. With the discerts, each person can say, conjo, I can't pronounce it, it's Greek or something. With God, each person can say, basically, I am. That's the interpretation of it. So he's saying that, you know, everybody can acknowledge the fact that they are. So he says, furthermore, each person knows that he is something. He also knows that something could not be produced by nothing. Therefore, whatever brought man in and everything else into existence had to be something. If the followers that this something which did all of the organizing and arranging would have to be all-knowing and to the full extent requires for such an organization and an arrangement. This something would therefore have to be superior to everything, which had resulted from its effort. This element of superiority makes this something the ultimate good for all that has been organized and arranged. In the Anglo-Saxon language, the word for supreme or ultimate good is God. So there's where we get the very word God from. God is the ultimate good for everything that it has created or arranged and put in motion. So if you, for instance, decide that you want to build a desk and you go get a log, carve that log out, and you make wood and planks and put it together, and you bring that desk into existence, then you are the God of that desk. And everything that you did was for the good or the benefit of that desk to exist. Everything you did might not have been beneficial to the log, but the log produced a desk of which you are the God of, and you are in complete control of every aspect of it with the intent to do good and not harm. That's a basic principle. Basic principle that the world accepted and that the world managed and functioned by. And the ancient Anglo-Saxons, which is where we get most of our foundational language and different things from, the very word for the ultimate good is God. So now we have a definition of God who must be self-existent and previous to all that has been created, if he has created it, and indeed he has. So now we have a basic premise, if you will, of where we came from, why we are here, and what we are doing. And man, according to Mr. Locke, is capable, he says the creator must of necessity be a a reasoning or thinking being, okay? A man of reasoning, certainly not a non-reasoning being like a rock, never could produce a reasoning being. So if God was a non-reasoning being, he could not produce a reasoning being. You can't produce something that is superior than you. See, the desk could not produce me if I created the desk. So therefore, his logic is very simple here. He's saying that if man, being a logical, thinking individual, was created by something greater than man, then that thing that created man must also be logical and thought-worthy and conducting with all of the same attributes that we have. So God must be superior to the things he's created and with the good of all things combined. And then the amazing thing is, we go to Genesis 1, and what do we read? In the beginning there was what? God, and God said, let there be, and be was. Oh, you mean God created heaven and earth and all of mankind? Well, it kind of looks that way, doesn't it? Even by logical understanding. We have all these people running around today saying, we got to have logic. We got to have the science of the thing. Well, this Mr. John Locke and Mr. William Blackstone, who we're going to get into here in a little bit, these men exactly believed that everything was scientific and could be proven scientifically, and that the attributes of all things that existed didn't do anything except confirm and prove the existence that God is. You see, the thing of it is, Mr. Christian nationalist, you don't have to defend God. You don't have to prove God is, because God is. And all things, when we look and consider whether God is, will point us to God, and we will have a strong sense of understanding that God is there. Okay, I'm not going to read some more of this of Mr. Locke, but the one statement that Mr. Locke made that I do want to read, it says, Locke felt that an atheist has failed to apply his divine capacity for reason and observation. The American founding fathers agreed that they considered the existence of the Creator as the most fundamental premises underlying all self-evident truth. It will be noted that as we proceed through this study, that every single self-evident truth enumerated by the fathers is rooted in the preposition of a divine Creator. So where do we get our inalienable rights? We get them from God and God alone. And this is 28. See, I'm going to have to wrap this up right here and make another episode to continue on with this thought. So from there, Mr. Locke, not our founding fathers now, this is a man who our founding fathers read. This is one who was studied. This is some of the basic elementary education that was brought through the Anglo-Saxons and the early educators that were bringing the readings on how things are, who we are, how we got here, answering all those same questions we're asking today. And the answer to that simply is God. So until we meet again on the pod, have a wonderful day.